What's up, welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of BlackBerry, the new business biopic film from indie filmmaker Matt Johnson about the rise and fall of BlackBerry, starring Jay Baruchel and Glenn Howerton. This is a film that really snuck up on me, getting a small, limited-ish release this past weekend after premiering at Berlin. And, Matt Johnson is someone I wasn't super familiar with. He's like a true independent filmmaker, but he actually also plays a role in this film as well, acting role. And I thought this was just a really tight, super compelling, well-made biopic film. If you think about this type of storytelling, very popular these days, very common, right? Just recently we got on Apple TV Plus, we got the Tetris film with Taron Egerton. We just got Matt Damon and Ben Affleck's Air, about Air Jordan. This is a pretty common thing. Of course, people know stuff like The Social Network, which is very similar to this BlackBerry film, of course. Steve Jobs. It seems that the tech world and like business exploits is like a sub-genre, like mini real-life IP that is starting to get quickly mined. Books about these topics are being quickly picked up to be adapted because I think there's a lot of confidence from studios that they can get people to watch stuff like this. And BlackBerry, I think, is one of the best examples of this I've seen in a long time. I thought this movie was both funny and just consistently riveting, which I also thought was incredibly impressive. Think about a movie like Air. We know what happens with Air. We know Nike wins. We know what happens with Air Jordan, how successful it is. But the movie's well made enough and the writing is strong enough that you're so compelled and entertained by the film. BlackBerry is very similar. We know what happens to BlackBerry. We know that BlackBerry rises up out of nowhere, basically, to dominate the nascent smartphone business, and then eventually gets its lunch completely stolen by Apple and Android. We know what happens with BlackBerry. And even though we know the finish line with this film, it's still just so riveting. And I think that just speaks to how well it's made and how it kind of subverts some of your expectations along the way, along that journey. I think the acting performances are really good. You have Jay Baruchel as Mike Lazaridis, one of the founders of Research in Motion, the company that would become BlackBerry. He's joined by Matt Johnson's character, Douglas Fregan, they're kind of the co-founders, and they, through chance, basically meet up with Glenn Howerton's character, Jim Vasili. And Jim is not a tech person like Mike is. Mike is a very intelligent tech developer, but Jim is a cutthroat businessman. And they kind of need each other to make something like this work. So they become co-CEOs of Research in Motion over in Canada, and eventually become BlackBerry. And due to superior design and Mike and his team of Canadian developers, their true design passion and design acumen focus on creating parts locally, not outsourcing out to like Foxconn in China to save money, but really focusing on quality design, quality product, and of course combine that further with Mike's true genius, being one of the first people to really tap into how networks work, and now you can kind of basically use data, that whole concept of using data in a smartphone and not having that tax cell signals the way phone calls and traditional text messages do. The development of BBM as an instant messaging service, it's all pretty compelling, but the way they have Mike communicate stuff with his genuine intellect about the technological aspects and the design of this sort of thing is really compelling. When they basically design program Verizon's towers to better suit their products as they rapidly explode in success and popularity. It's all handled in a really, I think, engaging and fun way. Think of a movie like Social Network, right? When things are going well, the movie is a rip-roaring time. That's kind of what happens with BlackBerry too. And it's really fun, I think, to be with Mike when he starts to win, because you see the intelligence. And I think what's great about the structure of this film is as things start to flip, they rapidly expand. Jim, has that reputation from the beginning as being a very cocky, arrogant, aggressive person. And now that he has all this success and all this money, he's turned that to some of his personal uses, whether that's abusing an assistant or aggressively purchasing a hockey team in the NHL, things like that. Mike starting to get a bit arrogant in his design philosophies and his belief in his own techniques, and it all kind of builds up to, the inciting incident, the bomb, if you will, when Apple in 2007 unveils the first iPhone, the famous Steve Jobs presentation, and all these people at BlackBerry watching that presentation and like seeing the full screen, no tactical keyboard thing, and Mike just having the complete wrong read on that people would like that, and that would be the future, right? The focusing on the BlackBerry click, that's what people like, and it's like kind of depressing, but you can't help but look away. Car crash style of storytelling, where it's like, man, you had it so right, and you just could not adapt. You just made bad decisions, and you let yourself get passed by. I think the movie does a really good job with managing that transition. Early in the film, BlackBerry's under threat to be hostile, taken over, not by Apple, but by Palm Pilot. You have Carrie Elways playing the CEO, Carl Yankowski, in the process. That's a really fun scene. But yeah, I mean, it's just, I think, fun to have like the time capsule of remember when Palm and BlackBerry, and even like, I guess you think of like HTC as well, just like the earlier phone manufacturers, right? Just back in the day, it's fun. Also, I think Matt Johnson is really underrated as Doug Freegan. The Doug character starts off, he's kind of the goof, right? Like he's the one who kind of builds up morale at Research in Motion, while Mike's kind of the tinkerer, the real, technical thinker. Doug, hosts these movie nights and kind of runs like a goofy developer bro culture kind of thing with his fellow devs. And when Jim shows up, he wants to put an end to that because it's not professional. And you think this is going to lead up to Doug and Mike having a divorce because Doug just won't get on board with the new program and will get in the way. But that's not actually what happens. Funny enough, as the movie progresses and things start to go bad, you realize that Doug is kind of the last person who had the original DNA of the company and like the original good intentions left, as Mike has kind of been consumed by being a CEO and having to worry about financing so much and then getting left behind as Apple takes over. Doug is the one who I think, maintains the soul at the end. So it kind of flipped my perception of what would happen with that character and how I felt about that character. In the beginning, you don't really like Doug. You feel like he's getting in the way, and at the end, you actually sympathize with Doug as things start to go bad. So yeah, I think BlackBerry, sneaky film, didn't have a big box office. It certainly won't. But it'll be on VOD soon. I would recommend people check this out. This type of movie that you're into, I think it's incredibly well done. And for more movie reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.